It's not a good idea to hide behind emails and SMSs when interacting with prospective clients and when reaching out to people to do business with in the future. Now, I get it. SMS and email are the safer option, and that's because there's less room for personal rejection, and a lot of people think that SMS and email are easier to scale. So you can create your template and blast it out and job done. But unfortunately, even though SMS and email, text options basically, even though text is safer, it is not as effective because phone calls and voice allow you to communicate nuance, allows you to use pacing and inflection to communicate much more effectively. For those of you who have tried to send funny SMSs or emails or have tried to send sarcastic text messages, you understand what it is that I'm trying to say. It's hard to pass across sarcasm in an SMS or an email, but it's easy to do that either in person or over the phone. And it's the same when you're trying to pass along a sense of engagement or a sense of enthusiasm. It's easier for you to do this over the phone than to use text-based media. Of course, voice is also more personable than text. So these are some of the reasons why voice and phone calls are more effective. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, just head back, take a step up to the menu, scroll down, and you'll see that there are several episodes that have been dedicated to the topic of effective communication. And so there you're going to hear in more detail my ideas and some exposition on why face-to-face communication ultimately is the best, followed by voice-based communications, phone calls, basically. So, another mistake that people make when it comes to handling phone calls is when people pick up the phone, they're usually much more interested in pursuing their own agenda. The average human being is self-interested. So if I pick up the phone and I call, leading the conversation only from the angle of what I am going to get out of it, the chances are that the call is going to flop. So you're better off figuring out what's in it for the other person and leading with that when you do eventually pick up the phone. In the beginning of my business career, if you can call it that, when I started my adventure as a wedding photographer, I too also had some hesitation with using the phone until I came across an easy outline that applies to most of the situations that a lot of us in the wedding and the event space are going to come up against. I can't remember where I got this outline from, and I can't remember the exact terms used in the outline, but I suspect it was something off of either Zig Ziglar or Brian Tracy. So for those of you who are familiar with the material, if you come across it, then please let me know so I can give credit to whom credit is due. And the outline is pretty simple, and it goes like this. You start off with the appropriate greeting. You go straight to your intention. You have to give the agenda, what the call is about, and then you ask a couple of questions. With all the information that you have, you make a proposal or a suggestion, and then you get to the close. So let me talk about each of the items in turn. So for greetings, the only thing that you have to keep in mind here is to use the appropriate greeting. What is the appropriate greeting? It depends on the context, the business context, the personal context, and what have you. So for some of you, the appropriate greeting might be good afternoon, good evening, good morning. For some of us, the appropriate greeting could be something as simple as, hey, what's up? How you doing? So it all depends. Just remember that you have to be appropriate to what the other person on the other end of the line is expecting. So the intention, this is where you get straight to the point about the agenda for the call. The reason why I'm calling is dot dot dot. For people, since phone call skills are lagging these days, a lot of people would appreciate it if you just get straight to the point on the phone call instead of doing that Niger thing where you start asking, how are you? How are the children? How's the family? How is mommy? How is this? How is that? Buhari economy, blah 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 blah. A lot of people, I think, would appreciate it if you get straight to the point and then leave the whole thing about mommy, Buhari economy, the children, the school, and all of that until much later, or preferably when you guys are in person and you're trying to establish some rapport. Of course, when you put your intention forward on the table, you're going to have to ask a couple of questions to see how things are applicable and whether it is suitable for you guys to make progress on the agenda in the first place. And then from all that banter and the questions, you're going to have a specific proposal that you have to put forward at the end of the call. And then the final item being the close, that is where you get the other person to take specific actions to get the ball rolling. So that is what the close means essentially. The close doesn't necessarily have to mean to collect the check. The close just has to be that you get the other person to make a commitment to what you guys have already agreed upon. So to flesh it out, let me use an example of a phone call that I had to make yesterday. I'm currently talking with a wedding planner about a pre-wedding shoot for her client. Wedding is coming up in September. Yes, in September. And so I called up the venue. It's a new restaurant that is yet to be opened. And so because of that, I'm not going to give the name of the establishment. Of course, after the shoot, maybe I'll make an episode and weave that bit in. So I called up the owner or the proprietor. I got the number from Instagram. So I called up the number. Excuse me. So I called up the number and I gave my appropriate greeting. For those of you who've been listening for a while now, you know that when I call the first time, I don't bother with leaving my name. I'll talk about that in a future episode. So I called. The most important thing for me was to confirm that I was speaking with the right person. So I called up and I used the business name. And she said, oh no, actually she used her name. So let's say her name is Valerie. So I used the business name and she said, oh no, this is Valerie. I was like, oh, Valerie, so are you the owner of ... And she was like, oh yeah, sure, I'm the proprietress. The reason why I'm calling is because I'm a photographer. I'd like to have pre-wedding shoots done on your premises. The bride reached out. She said it's a really cool place. So that was my intention, and then I moved straight into the question phase. Is that possible? Is that something you guys are interested in? She seemed to have some hesitation because the place is still under works and it's not yet opened. But of course, I followed up with just saying that from the pictures that we had seen on Instagram so far, it looked like the places that they had done up were more than sufficient for the ideas that we wanted to try out. But having established that they were open to it, and then it was possible, in order not to push for a hard close, I came up with a simple proposal that we should visit the location with the bride on Friday and have a look around. So that was the proposal. That's the second to the last stage. And then, of course, she said, oh, no problem with that. I'll hook you up with the manager. And so in that case, the close was very simple. Okay, so after this conversation, I'm going to expect the manager's phone number. And just to let you guys know, we will be pushing for Friday, preferably early in the day. You guys let me know what time would be convenient for you. After the conversation, send my follow-up SMSs. Thank you very much for the call. Don't forget to send the manager's phone number. And remember, I'll be pushing for Friday morning. Of course, she sends the manager's phone number. That is good. I call up the manager and went through the whole thing again. Appropriate greeting, intention, questions, proposal, and then close. And we have agreed for Friday, and we have locked down the time. So this is just a nice, neat example to show how this call outline can apply to many situations that we find ourselves in as wedding and event professionals. So the reason why I like this outline or this template is after you do it a couple of times, 3-4 times, it's easy to remember. You don't forget it. It's basically been in the back of my pocket for the last 5 years or more. It's easy to apply. You can't go wrong with that. It's easy to direct the conversation to get straight to the point and to be done with pretty much whatever kind of conversation it is in 2 to 10 minutes flat, and you don't waste the person's time. So of course it would have been easier, in quote, to send SMSs or email because there's less room for rejection. But let's face it, lots of people aren't on point when it comes to the email game or the Instagram DM game. So I would have sent the SMS, which would have been easy to ignore. I could have sent the email, which would remain in the inbox for God knows how long, and it's the same thing with the DM. So getting on the phone meant that we saved time and that we were more effective and got to the root of the agenda. So I will wrap it up here because we've gone over the 10-minute mark. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede. I'll catch you guys at the next recording. And I hope that with this simple outline of appropriate greeting, intentions, questions, proposal or suggestions, and close, that you guys are going to engage in a lot more phone calls. At least those of you who have been trigger shy and who prefer to hide behind SMSs and emails. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. I will catch you on the next recording.